I'm Larry O'Connor, and in for a vacationing Brian Wilson is Tori Clark. Hello, Tori.
Good morning.
Joining us right now is the former top cop, as they called him, over at the U.S. Capitol, Terry Gaynor. Mr. Gaynor, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Happy Monday.
Want to talk to you about, thank you, happy Monday to you too. You put forth a proposal to increase security for the Capitol, and it involves shutting down traffic in a pretty major area. Why don't you lay out what your proposal is for us?
Well, the words of this are very important, and shutting down traffic is not the goal. Rerouting traffic is. Having less cars on the Hill would be a goal, having more green space. So it seems to me we keep trying to manage traffic and security in the same old way. And my thought was that if we had a transportation center, so the cars, let's say, for instance, on the east side of D.C., out by the RFK, turn that into a very high-class parking facility, transportation center, where cars coming from that end of the city would park there and then have some economically or eco-friendly transportation in trams or something. We'd bring less cars into the city altogether, which would alleviate the demand on Independence and Constitution. Then from a security point of view, Independence and Constitution and First Street do present real problems to the Capitol complex, the Supreme Court, the Library of Congress, and we ought to have a long-term goal as to how to minimize that. So in keeping even with some of LaFonte's plans about the area, we'd make it much more pedestrian-friendly, fewer cars, make it easier for people to get in and out of the city, and have less demand on our streets. Part of that would require, for instance, up on the Capitol, issuing less parking places. So, if you build a surface lot, people will come. I think people in this area in particular look for some alternate means of transportation. We see how high demand it is on the metro and others. So a combination of metro, bikes, better parking facilities reduces the amount of cars. We increase security. Part of my plan also included a long-term vision of the property up on that end of the city, just like a university does at Georgetown or George Washington University. Over 50, 60 years, you continue to buy property and then increase your standoff and habitability and green space. So that's a long answer to a complicated issue.
Well, there's a lot there. And by the way, we would love for you to chime in on this, 888-630-9625. If you work around the Capitol, if you work downtown by the mall, and or if you just like to visit and go enjoy your federal government and all the buildings and monuments that are down there, what do you think of this plan to basically, it sounds to me like you're eliminating cars from the whole National Mall area, Constitution and Independence Avenue, Mr. Gaynor?
Well, if you use the words like eliminating, shut down, it just rankles people. So I guess yes, having fewer cars but alternatives. So it doesn't stop people from traveling. It gives you other alternatives.
So, some of these provisions were put into effect after 9/11. A whole lot of parking spaces and areas where you could park were already eliminated, and it's already become a really, really difficult place to go and get around and park. Your plan would make it that much worse.
I don't think so. I think if you combine, if you give people alternatives, so that if we're just looking at this only from a transportation perspective, I think the city and region is doing a lot. So they're making more bike racks and bike lanes, but we're not going to have the streets flow freely just by doing that. There has to be a reduced number of demands for cars, and if you have a better way to move people, whether it's the light rail or the things they're planning on 8th Street, there are ways to move people smartly, and you don't have to be in a vehicle, and you can make the area safer.
I just think, with all due respect, right or wrong, if you tell people to come to this part of Washington, D.C., you're going to have to drive on the outsides of the city or the edge of the city and then get on some other transportation vehicle and get to where you want to walk around. I think you're going to greatly discourage the number of people who want to come to this great city.
And I appreciate that perspective. And that's why I think a lot of people have to talk about that. But again, based on my experience over these last 15 years here, you see every time that we open parking areas for the metro system, people are very willing to drive to those areas and get on, or to our trains and get in, as long as it's easy and comfortable. And I think you can do that, but it is a long-term investment. You have to have a good 50-year vision, and you have to do some things differently.
Well, when you say, you find that people will come and park at metro stations and take a metro in, the people you're talking about are the people who work there, the people who spend all day there. It's a good 8-9 hour investment. What about people who just want to come and visit and just want to spend an hour, spend lunchtime down at the mall? I mean, it sounds to me like what you're proposing would be a pretty long day for somebody to park on the outskirts and then take a tram in.
On the contrary, I don't think the majority of our visitors who want to come down and spend an hour on the mall or up at the Capitol are driving in. Again, someone would. I don't mean to be anecdotal about this, but I think our visitors come in by a variety of means, and they're not all driving up to the Capitol or the Washington Monument or the Lincoln Memorial simply because there's no place to park now.
Yeah. Well, but again, that partly got exacerbated after all of the parking places were removed after September 11th. Our guest is Terry Gaynor. He's the former Sergeant-at-Arms at the Capitol, and he has put forth this proposal. And who was this submitted to, and who was evaluating this idea?
Well,
Mr.
the Capitol Police Board has a responsibility for a variety of things up in the Capitol, including security. So in trying to look at how we can improve security, we wanted to look at traffic management and parking and how you check vehicles and how you check trucks, how you make it easier for people to move around the campus on a 24-hour way. So there's a whole series of studies we did about, again, transportation, getting onto the Capitol grounds, parking, green space, searching of vehicles, or the searching of delivery trucks. Let's just talk about that for a second. Every major federal institution now in the District of Columbia, the major ones, all do their delivery inspections at a different spot. We had simply proposed, or at least I had talked about, having one area where all delivery trucks into the city would be screened. Okay, then that would save money, it would save time, and make things smoother. So if you hook all these things together, one of them alone is not going to solve both our transportation issues, our parking issues, our security issues, but you have to kind of look at them together.
Yeah, you're right. And you're right also about not being anecdotal about this, but I've lived in D.C. now for 30 years. And one of the great talking points about D.C. used to be it was so easy to get around. That is so not true now. And when they closed off, as everyone said at the time, just a very small part of Pennsylvania Avenue and the street behind the White House, and they said the same things you're saying, Sarah, which is, no, it's a little bit about security, but we also want to preserve green space, and people are going to be able to walk, and it will be lovely. It has created a nightmare in the heart of the city, a nightmare. It is so hard to drive anywhere 10, 12 blocks in the perimeter around the White House, and I just have visions of the same thing happening up on the outside.
But expanding outward.
Yeah, expanding outward.
But I don't disagree. If you did it onesies and twosies, that is the consequence. So if each little different entity in the city has its own individual problem, you push the problem someplace else. Excuse me. That's why I'm suggesting that a global view, a citywide dome view of the whole Capitol region, we can work through this together. So the White House is not pushing the problem to the Capitol. The Capitol is not pushing it over to the central business districts. And I don't. So that's one issue. The other is I don't think our parking problem became necessarily a 911 problem. Cheapers. We have more business, more people, more cars.
Yeah.
So well,
listen, Terry Gaynor, former Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, I appreciate you joining us. I agree with you on that. Every time we have somebody from the council on, we ask them about increasing parking downtown, and all they say to us is, well, we've got more bike lanes. So
it's a great step, but it is not the answer.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.